The Buddha never said everything is one. Almost every spiritual teacher you've ever read will tell you the Buddha taught that we are all one, that separateness is illusion, that awakening means dissolving back into some cosmic whole. Thanissaro Bhikkhu, who has produced more than 1,000 sutta translations from the Pali Canon, says it in 7 words. The Buddha himself never taught that. What he taught instead is sharper, stranger, and far more useful. If you've read Eckhart Tolle, or listened to Alan Watts, or followed Sam Harris into meditation, you've probably absorbed a particular idea without even noticing. That Buddhism, at its deepest level, teaches the oneness of all things. That the separate self is illusion. That reality is one undivided whole. It sounds Buddhist. It feels Buddhist. But Thanissaro Bhikkhu traced exactly where this idea actually came from. And it wasn't the Pali Canon. In his essay, The Roots of Buddhist Romanticism, he wrote that many Westerners, when new to Buddhism, are struck by the uncanny familiarity of what seem to be its central concepts: interconnectedness, wholeness, ego transcendence. But these concepts sound familiar, he argues, because they are familiar. They came not from the Buddha's teachings, but through a back door that was already open in Western culture. So what did the Buddha actually say when someone asked him directly in the Lokāyatika Sutta, Samyutta Nikaya 12.48, SN 12.48? A Brahmin cosmologist comes to the Buddha with 4 questions. Not casual questions. These were the 4 dominant cosmological positions of the ancient world, and the Buddha's response to each one is identical and devastating. Does everything exist? The Buddha's response: that everything exists is the senior form of cosmology. Does everything not exist? That is the second form of cosmology. Is everything a oneness? That is the third form of cosmology. Is everything a plurality? That is the fourth form of cosmology. 4 questions, 4 rejections, not silence, not ambiguity, but direct, named dismissal. Everything as a oneness wasn't overlooked. It wasn't left open for later traditions to fill in. It was placed in the same category as everything exists and nothing exists. Cosmological positions the Buddha refused to endorse. And then he said what he actually taught instead. Avoiding these 2 extremes, the Tathagata teaches the Dhamma via the middle. From ignorance as a requisite condition come fabrications. SN 12.48, not oneness, not manyness, dependent origination. If this pattern sounds familiar, it should. In our last video on Not Self, we saw the Buddha do exactly the same thing. SN 44.10. Is there a self? Refused. Is there no self? Refused. Same surgical move. Same refusal to land on either side of a polarity. The consistency is the point. The Kakanagotta Sutta, Samyutta Nikaya 12.15, SN 12.15, spells out the philosophical engine behind that refusal. By and large, Kakayana, this world is supported by a polarity, that of existence and non-existence. SN 12.15. The Buddha is naming something precise here. The human mind naturally gravitates toward fixed positions. Things either exist permanently or they don't exist at all. Everything is one, or everything is separate. The Buddha says both poles are traps. And then he offers the alternative, not as metaphysics, but as observable principle. When this is, that is. From the arising of this comes the arising of that. When this isn't, that isn't. From the cessation of this comes the cessation of that. SN 12.15. This is dependent origination at its most compressed. No 12-link chain, no cosmological system. Just a statement about how things actually work. Specific conditions produce specific effects. Remove the condition, the effect ceases. This isn't mystical unity, it's operational, and this is where it matters for your actual life, not just your philosophy. Because the oneness framework and the dependent origination framework don't just describe reality differently. They prescribe completely different responses to suffering. Under the oneness framework, boundaries between things are ultimately illusion. Suffering exists because you've forgotten your true nature, that you are at root one with everything. The cure is a single moment of recognition. You see through the veil. You remember what you always were. And ethics are downstream. They follow naturally once you've had the recognition. You don't need rules. You need awakening. Under dependent origination, the picture looks entirely different. Conditions are specific and functional, not illusory. Suffering doesn't come from forgetting some cosmic truth. It arises from specific traceable conditions. Ignorance, fabrication, craving, clinging. The cure isn't a one-shot recognition, it's operational. You find the condition, you change the condition, you test whether the suffering changes. And ethics aren't downstream at all. They're upstream. Sla, your conduct, your restraint, your commitments, is foundational. It's the ground the entire practice stands on. Here's what that looks like in practice. Say you're angry. Under the oneness model, your anger is a symptom of separation. You've forgotten you're one with everything, including the person you're angry at. The prescription: recognize the deeper unity. Let the anger dissolve in that recognition. Under dependent origination, something very different happens. Your anger didn't arise because you forgot you're one with the universe. It arose because specific conditions were present. A feeling tone you didn't notice. A perception that solidified before you examined it. An unexamined craving for things to be other than they are. Find the condition. Change the condition. The anger changes. You don't need a cosmic recognition. You need a knife and a workshop, or take something subtler. That persistent need for approval. The oneness framework says, you seek approval because you don't realize you're already complete, already whole. See through the illusion of the separate self, and the need dissolves. Dependent origination says that need arose from specific conditions, a feeling of inadequacy tied to a particular perception, fed by a particular habit of attention. You can find the link. You can test whether loosening it changes the pattern. And if it does, you've learned something about how your mind actually works. Not through cosmic insight, but through direct investigation. This is what the reader of Tolle hasn't seen yet. Not dissolution, precision, not one great recognition, but a practice you can test, refine, and verify in the texture of your own experience. The Buddha didn't ask you to dissolve into the whole. He handed you tools. So if the Buddha explicitly rejected oneness as a cosmological position, why does everyone think he taught it? Because the idea entered Western Buddhism through a gate that was already open. Schopenhauer read the Upanishads through a Latin translation in 1819 and declared the self an illusion within a cosmic whole. Emerson wrote about the Oversoul in 1841. Huxley published The Perennial Philosophy in 1945, arguing all religions teach the same oneness at their core. Watts brought it to a mass audience in the 1960s. You are the universe experiencing itself. Tolle crystallized it for 16 million readers. We are all one consciousness. By the time most Westerners encountered Buddhism, the oneness template was already installed. The Buddha's teachings were filtered through it. And dependent origination, which looks nothing like cosmic unity, was reinterpreted as exactly that. Thanissaro puts it plainly. Ironically, dependent co-arising is often interpreted in modern Buddhist circles as the Buddha's affirmation of oneness and the interconnectedness of all beings. But this interpretation doesn't take into account the Buddha's own dismissal of oneness. Nobody chose wrongly. They inherited a translation problem 2 centuries in the making. To be clear, the Buddha was not denying connection. He wasn't teaching that you're an isolated atom bouncing through an indifferent universe. He was saying something more precise than either oneness or separateness. And precision is exactly what makes it useful. For the reader of Tolle, this isn't an attack on what moved you. It's an invitation to look at what you haven't seen yet. Dependent origination is testable in a way that oneness never was. For the reader raised in Abrahamic tradition, dependent origination isn't pantheism either. It's not God is everything dressed in Buddhist robes. It's something the Western theological tradition never quite arrived at. A middle way that refuses both the cosmic whole and the isolated soul. Bhikkhu Bodhi, the other major Pali translator of our time, agrees. The Pali Suttas preserve real dualities: suffering and its cessation, samsara and nibbana. These are not illusions to be dissolved. They are conditions to be understood. 25 centuries ago, a Brahmin walked up to the Buddha and asked, "Is everything a oneness?" The Buddha said no. He called it a form of cosmology, a fixed position, no different from everything exists or nothing exists. And then he taught something better. Not a cosmic truth to recognize, but a principle to work with. When this is, that is. When this isn't, that isn't. Find the condition. Change the condition. Test the result. That's not oneness. That's not separateness. That's the middle. And it's where the real practice begins. But if we're not all one, then what is your relationship to everything around you? To suffering, to other beings, to the path itself? The Buddha had an answer for that too, and it begins with something he called stream entry.